The sun was low, bleeding orange across the dry sky. A lone merchant wagon rolled slowly over the broken road, pulled by a creaky hover engine and a tired animal that looked more like a lizard than a horse. The merchant, a fat man with gold rings and thick sunglasses, didn't notice the loose strap on the side of his cargo hold. Behind him, something heavy shifted. Then, crack. A silver capsule, smooth and glowing faintly, slid off the back of the wagon and hit the hard ground. The merchant didn't look back. His wagon kept going, disappearing behind the hills of rust-colored dirt. But someone saw. From the rocks above, a boy named Ken watched everything. He was small, dirty, and hungry, but his eyes were sharp. He had been searching for scrap, old wires, broken metal, anything to sell. What he saw now was not junk. It looked valuable, maybe even priceless. Ken climbed down quickly, his hands covered in dust. He moved close to the capsule, step by step, like it might explode. The thing was about the size of a coffin. Strange letters covered the side, glowing blue marks in a language he didn't know. He wiped some dirt off and stared. Inside, behind the glass, was a girl. Her skin was soft purple. Her hair floated like it was in water, even though there was no water inside. She wore a silver suit that shimmered when the light hit it. Her eyes were closed, her hands folded over her chest. Ken's heart beat faster. He had never seen anything like her. She didn't look human, but she didn't look dangerous either. "What are you?" he whispered. The capsule made a soft hum, like it was sleeping. Ken looked around. The road was quiet. No one else had seen it. If he left it here, someone else would find it. If he stayed too long, the merchant might come back. He made a decision. With all his strength, he pulled out an old hover sled from under the sand. It barely worked, but it floated just enough to carry the capsule. He tied it down, using ropes and parts from his junk bag, then dragged it toward his small hut near the cliffs. It took hours. His hands bled. His legs hurt. But he didn't stop. Finally, just as the last light of the sun faded, Ken reached his hut, a small room made of scrap metal and broken glass. He pushed the capsule inside and shut the door. Inside, the capsule glowed softly in the dark. The girl didn't move. Ken sat down on the floor, breathing hard. He stared at her. She looked peaceful. But something about her felt wrong. Not evil, just heavy. Like she carried pain inside her, even asleep. He reached out and placed his hand on the glass. It was warm. Suddenly the capsule made a sound, a low beep. Then another. Ken pulled back, afraid. The capsule beeped again. Lights blinked along its side. Then, a small red circle appeared, on the glass. A scanner. It swept across Ken's face. It paused, then flashed yellow. Ken didn't know what that meant. Outside, far above the cliffs, something moved in the sky. A small black shape, silent, fast, flying low. It hovered for a moment, scanning the ground. Then it turned and sped off. Ken didn't see it. He was still inside, watching the capsule. He grabbed a blanket, wrapped himself up, and leaned against the wall. He didn't sleep. He just watched. That night, he dreamed. In his dream, the girl opened her eyes. She reached for him. Her voice echoed in his mind, not in words but feelings. Fear, hunger, loneliness. He woke up sweating. The capsule still glowed, still quiet, but outside in the darkness, something was coming, and it wasn't human. Ken didn't remember falling asleep, but now something felt wrong. He opened his eyes slowly. It was still dark outside. The wind whispered against the metal walls of his hut. The air was cold and heavy, like it had secrets. Then he heard it. Tap, 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 a soft sound. Not outside, not at the door. From inside the room. Ken sat up, his blanket falling from his shoulders. The capsule was glowing brighter now. A soft mist filled the glass, and something moved inside. The girl's hand twitched. Ken crawled closer, his breath caught in his throat. He pressed his ear to the capsule. It hummed louder than before. Then, with a soft hiss, the glass cracked open. Mist poured out. Ken jumped back. The girl's hand moved again, this time stronger. Her fingers shook, then opened. Her eyes fluttered. And then, they opened. Not like human eyes. They were silver, bright, like stars in deep water. She gasped for breath. Her body shook. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Ken didn't know what to do. He took a step forward. "Hello?" he said, his voice dry. She turned her head slowly and stared at him. Her face was full of fear, confusion, maybe even pain. Ken raised his hand slowly. "It's okay. I found you. You fell off a wagon." She blinked. Her mouth moved again. This time she spoke, but it wasn't his language. Soft sounds, smooth and strange, filled the room. Ken shook his head. "I don't understand." The girl touched her chest. "Varel," she said weakly. "Varel?" Ken repeated. He pointed at himself. "Ken." She looked around the room. Her eyes paused on the tools, the wires, the rusted metal. She seemed lost, afraid. Then suddenly, she grabbed her head and cried out. Ken rushed forward. "What's wrong?" She pointed to her neck. Her veins glowed faintly, blue light pulsing under her skin. Ken saw something behind her ear, a small metal chip, blinking red. The capsule beeped again. Ken turned. A hidden panel on the side of the machine had opened. Inside it was a small screen. Words scrolled across it in red. Biometric sync error. Royal clearance denied. Signal sent. Ken didn't understand, but one word made his chest go tight. Signal. Outside, the wind picked up. The night wasn't empty anymore. Far above in the sky, a drone changed direction. Its sensors caught the signal. A match was found. Target, Varel. Status, escaped royal cargo location, confirmed action. Retrieval in progress. Back in the hut, Varel was trying to stand. She wobbled, weak, her hands gripping the edge of the capsule. Ken grabbed her arm, helping her sit down. He pointed to the capsule. "You were in this. Someone was taking you somewhere." Varel looked down. Her face went cold. Her silver eyes grew darker. She touched the strange symbol on her suit, a spiral with a jagged line through it. Ken noticed her breathing slow. She closed her eyes for a moment like she was remembering something. Then she opened them again and spoke. This time, it was broken English. Strange, but clear. "They sell me." Ken's blood froze. "Who?" he asked. She looked at him. "The men, the rich ones. I was gift for buying war tools." Ken felt sick. He looked at the capsule again. It hadn't been a rescue pod. It had been a cage. Suddenly, the girl grabbed his wrist. Her touch was warm, electric. "No safe," she whispered. "They come." Ken's heart pounded. He rushed to the window and peeked outside. Dark shapes moved, far across the hills. Silent. Floating. Machines. Not from Earth. "We need to go," he said. Varel stood, still shaking, but stronger now. Ken opened a trapdoor under his hut. Inside was a tunnel, left from old war times. He helped her down. Before he followed, he looked back at the capsule one last time. Its lights went dark. Then, boom. Something landed outside, heavy, cold, hungry. Ken slammed the trapdoor shut, and the world above them changed forever. Dark tunnels were supposed to be safe, but this one felt like a grave. Ken walked first, holding a weak flashlight. The air was cold and damp. The walls were cracked. Old writing from a forgotten war covered the stone. Behind him, Varel moved slowly. Her steps were light, almost silent. She looked around like she'd been here before, even though that was impossible. Neither of them spoke. Every few seconds, Ken stopped and listened. He didn't hear the machines above, but he felt them. In his bones, in his teeth. The kind of silence that meant something dangerous was near. 2 hours passed. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber filled with broken crates and dead machines. It looked like a place soldiers once used during the old Earth Wars. Ken sat down and wiped his face. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Varel stood in front of a wall. Her fingers touched the old symbols carved into it. "You know this place?" Ken asked. She turned her head slowly. "This is old. Human place. Long before now. Before peace." Ken frowned. "You speak more now?" She nodded. "Your words come back fast. Strange but soft." Then she walked to a corner and sat down. Ken looked at her. "You said they were coming. Who are they?" Varel's face darkened. "Retrievers," she said. "Machines. Born to catch. Things like me." "What do they do when they catch you?" She looked at him, then said nothing, but her silence was loud. Above ground, the machines had found the hut. They moved like spiders. Silent. Perfect. Black metal arms touched the burned capsule, scanned the dust, tasted the air. Match confirmed. Trail found. They dropped into the earth like shadows with claws. Back in the tunnel, Ken found an old screen still working. It flickered with static, then came to life. A map showed the tunnels beneath the hills. He zoomed in. Something red was moving toward them. Fast. "They're coming," he said. Varel stood up. "Then we run." They grabbed a small pack of supplies and moved. Deeper into the earth. But the retrievers were not far behind. The path narrowed. Ken's light blinked, then died. Darkness. Only their breath now. Then, a sound like metal fingers scraping stone. Ken stopped. So did Varel. A single red. Light appeared behind them, then 2, then 4. Ken pulled Varel forward. "Go!" They ran. The machines gave chase. No footsteps, just the hiss of moving death. Ahead, the tunnel split in 2. Ken turned left. Varel stopped him. "Wait. Right side. Air smells fresher." Ken trusted her. They ran right. They came to a large metal door. Ken pushed with all his strength. It didn't open. The machines were almost there. Varel stepped forward. She touched the control panel. Her hand glowed. Click. The door opened. Inside was a dark, round room. In the center, a black console with glowing buttons. Ken slammed the door behind them. They were safe, for now. Varel touched the console. A voice filled the room. "Human command room, Sector 9, security offline." Ken stepped back. "This is military tech, old war tech." Varel looked at him. "Your people were powerful once." Ken shook his head. "Not anymore." Suddenly, Varel touched her chest. Her eyes closed. "What's wrong?" Ken asked. She whispered, "I remember now. My ship, my family, gone." Ken stood beside her. "I'm sorry." She looked up at him. "You are not like others." "I'm just a scavenger," Ken said. She smiled for the first time. "You saved me." The machines outside scratched at the door. Then everything went quiet. Ken and Varel looked at each other. Something worse was waiting, and neither of them was ready. Ken had never seen a room like this. It was old. Older than his grandfather's time. The walls were covered in dust, but the machines were still breathing. Lights blinked, screens flickered, wires hummed softly like they were dreaming. In the center was a round console shaped like a sleeping heart. Thick cables ran from it into the walls and ceiling. A giant screen above it showed nothing but static and numbers. Varel stood in silence, Something about this room made her skin crawl. Not from fear, but from memory. She placed her hand on the console. It was cold. "This place is not dead," she said. Ken nodded. "Yeah, it's waiting." He walked slowly around the room. He saw old helmets, weapons with rusted barrels, a cracked flag that once had stars. He touched the flag gently. "This was human war before we gave up fighting." Varel looked at him. "Why did you stop?" Ken smiled sadly. "Maybe because we lost." Suddenly, a deep thump echoed through the room. The console lit up. The screen above flickered. Then a voice filled the air. "Identity check. Human bloodline detected." Scanning. Ken froze. "What?" A red beam scanned his face, then his chest. The voice spoke again. "Match found. Secondary gene signature, Unit 9 Commander bloodline." Ken stepped back. "My father was a mechanic, not a soldier." The voice ignored him. Reactivating core system. Waking unit, X-13. From behind a wall, something moved. A panel opened, and a giant metal figure stepped into the light, 7 feet tall, one red eye, broad shoulders, covered in scars, a forgotten human war machine, X-13. Ken grabbed Varel's hand. "Run!" The machine raised its arm, but didn't fire. It spoke in a voice that shook the walls. "Stand down. Commander air detected. Status, uncertain." Ken stopped. "You're not here to kill us?" The machine turned to him. "I was made to protect humanity. You carry human war blood. I obey." Ken's heart pounded. "I didn't even know." Varel stepped forward. "What is this thing?" Ken answered. "A ghost, from when humans were scary." The machine's red eye glowed. "Alien unit detected. Name, Varel. Class, Royal Hybrid. Status, hunted." She raised her hands. "I'm not your enemy." The machine paused. "You are the property of the Zeltari, merchants. Escape is forbidden, return is required." Ken stood between them. "No, she's free now." The machine was silent. Then it said, "Command override. Accepted. Enemy units approaching. Defense required." Ken blinked. "You'll help us?" X-13 lifted a giant arm and pointed to a broken vent in the ceiling. "Escape path active, go now." Ken looked up. "What about you?" "I will hold them," the machine said. Varel stared at the machine. "You will die." The red eye blinked. "I am already dead." Above them, the retrievers broke through. The tunnel wall, cold eyes, long limbs, no heart. They moved fast, but the machine moved faster. Ken and Varel climbed the vent. Metal groaned under their feet. Ken looked back one last time. The machine stood in the center of the room like a titan of old Earth. The retrievers dropped from the ceiling. One fired, but the machine caught the shot in its hand. Then, boom. The room shook as the war machine charged into battle. Ken and Varel kept climbing. The metal stairs led them higher, toward the surface. Dust filled the air. The walls shook, heat pressed against their backs. But they didn't stop. Not until they reached a broken metal hatch. Ken pushed it open. They saw stars. They were outside again. Free. For now. The desert was quiet again. Stars stretched above Ken and Varel like cold eyes watching from space. They sat by a small fire, hidden between rocks. Far behind them, the war machine was gone, along with the retrievers. Ken hadn't said much since. He just stared at the flames, thinking about the machine's last words. "I am already dead." Beside him, Varel shivered. Her body was changing, not from the cold, but from something deeper. Her skin was pale now. Her hands shook. Her eyes, once silver and bright, had gone dull like empty glass. Ken noticed. "You're not okay." Varel shook her head slowly. "I am hungry." Ken handed her a protein bar from his pack. "Here, it's not great, but—" She pushed, eyed away gently. "Not that kind." "Then what?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Her lips trembled. You will not understand. Ken leaned forward. Try me. Virel looked at the fire. My kind. We don't eat like you. We need something else. Ken waited. She whispered. We need emotion. Human emotion. It is life for us. Memory, pain, love, fear. It gives us power. Ken stared. You feed on feelings? Virel shook her head. Not feed, share, touch, connect. Ken went quiet. Virel closed her eyes. When you helped me, when you feared for me, it gave me strength. Now, I have nothing. Ken swallowed. How do you take it? She looked up. A touch. A memory. Something real. Ken didn't move. She reached out and gently touched his hand. Suddenly, Ken felt something strange, like a thread pulling from his chest. Not painful, not wrong, but deep, like she was reading a book inside his heart. Virel's eyes glowed softly. She saw flashes Ken as a child alone in the junk fields, his father sick in bed, the night he buried him, the years he lived in silence. Tears filled her eyes. She pulled back. Ken gasped. What did you see? Virel looked away. Enough. Her hands stopped shaking. Color returned to her skin. Her voice grew stronger. Ken rubbed his chest. It felt like I gave you a piece of myself. She nodded. You did, and I carry it now. Ken looked at her, unsure whether to feel afraid or honored. Virel whispered, That's why they want us. My kind. The rich ones, they don't care about power. They want to feel. We are the only way they can. Ken clenched his fists. So they buy you, lock you up, drain you. Virel didn't answer, but her silence was full of truth. Suddenly, something beeped. Ken pulled a device from his bag, a tracker he'd found back in the bunker. A red dot was blinking. What is that? Virel asked. Ken frowned. I don't know. It was dead before. The dot blinked faster. Ken zoomed out. More. Dots appeared coming from the east, not retrievers, something else. They're tracking the bond, Virel said. Now that I've taken from you and they can follow. Ken stood up. Then we run again. Virel nodded. But before they moved, she touched his shoulder. I'm sorry. For what? Ken asked. She looked into his eyes. For dragging your heart into mine. Ken looked away, then back. You didn't drag it, he said. I gave it. Far away, a new ship cut through the stars. It wasn't from the merchant fleet. It wasn't a machine. It was alive, and it was hungry too. The cave was hidden under an old radio tower, half buried in red sand. Ken and Virel took shelter there after traveling all night. Their bodies were tired, but their minds could not rest. Ken sat near a rusted machine, fixing a small scanner. His hands moved fast, but his eyes kept drifting to Virel. She stood by a wall, her back to him, silent, still, like a statue carved from sadness. What's wrong? Ken asked. Virel didn't turn. I know who I am now. Ken stopped working. You remembered? She nodded. Tell me, he said gently. Virel touched her chest. Her voice was soft and sharp. My name is Virel Sena, daughter of the last matron of Velis, heir to the Void Throne. I was born not to serve, but to lead. Ken stared. Then why were you in that capsule? Why were they selling you? Virel closed her eyes. Betrayal. She walked to the middle of the cave. Her steps were slower now. Heavier. My people once ruled a star line. Hundreds of worlds. But we believed in peace. We banned emotion trade. We refused to sell pain or love. Ken whispered. Emotion trade? She nodded. It is the dark heart of the galaxy. Rich creatures, ones who cannot feel like humans, pay to taste real feeling. They feed on it, we refuse them. She looked at Ken now. So they sent merchants to buy us in secret. They killed my mother, erased my planet from the maps, and they kept me for the auction. Ken's fists clenched. Why you? Because I am the last. The pure line. Royal blood carries deeper memory, older pain, richer love. I was the perfect source. Ken stood and walked to her. You are not a thing to be used. Varel shook her head. Not anymore. Her body began to glow. Faint, but real. Silver, lines lit under her skin like old veins waking up. Ken stepped back. What's happening? Varel breathed deeply. The bond. When you gave your heart, it unlocked mine. She raised her hands. They pulsed with light. I don't know how to control it yet, but it's waking. Ken stared. Can you fight them now? She looked toward the cave mouth. Not yet. But soon. Outside, sand began to rise. A low hum filled the air. Ken rushed to the scanner. Dots. Dozens of them, coming fast. They're here, he said. Varel closed her eyes. Ken grabbed her arm. We need to run. She didn't move. Instead, she whispered, No, we hide no more. Ken looked into her eyes, and they were no longer afraid. The cave shook. From above, dark ships dropped from the sky. Not machines this time. People. Tall, thin and pale, wrapped in robes of gold and black. Their eyes were hollow. Their faces, perfect and fake. The merchants had arrived. Their leader stepped forward. He smiled with teeth too white. Return our royal, he said through a translator. We paid for her. Ken raised a broken blaster. The merchant laughed. How human. He raised a hand. His guards aimed their weapons. Then the air cracked. Varel stepped out. Her voice echoed across the rocks. You come to take me? The merchant blinked. We own you. She raised her hand. The sky flashed. Sand lifted like a wave and slammed down. Guards flew through the air. The merchant's translator cracked. His fake skin peeled slightly. He stepped back. This is not possible. Varel floated a few inches above the ground now. Silver fire danced in her eyes. Ken stood beside her, his heart racing. What are you? The merchant asked. She smiled. Not yours. Then she reached for Ken's hand, and they walked toward the enemy together. The merchant city was made of glass and gold. It stood like a throne in the desert, bright towers rising from the sand, glowing with stolen light. Inside, music played. Rich voices laughed. And in the center arena, the auction had already begun. Cages lined the walls. Inside them, alien children, soft-skinned dreamers. Some cried. Some stared in silence. Above them, alien nobles sat in round seats, sipping colorless drinks, waiting to feel something real. Then the main auctioneer stepped forward. He held a crystal mic. His voice boomed. And now, the final prize of the night. Royal blood. Last of her kind. Living source of ancient pain and rare purity. The crowd leaned forward, but the cage was empty, and the merchant began to sweat. Outside the city walls, lightning cracked from a clear sky. The guards pointed, their weapons. Alarms rang out. Too late. A wall of energy slammed into the gates, ripping them open like paper. The ground shook, and in walked the girl they thought was gone. Varel. Her eyes burned with silver light. Her hands were calm, but the air around her screamed. And beside her, dust-covered, tired but unbroken, walked Ken. One boy, one starborn girl. Together. The nobles stood. Some ran. Some fell to their knees. The auctioneer tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Varel raised her hand. Every screen in the city turned white. Then her face appeared. Not scared, not angry. True. I was meant to be a gift, she said. But I am not yours to give. The crowd froze. You fed on the pain of others, on the love you could not feel. You turned my people into fountains of sorrow. She looked down at the children in the cages. With a thought, the doors opened. One by one, the cages broke apart. The children stepped out, blinking at the light. Ken turned to her. Varel, they'll attack you. She shook her head. They already did. The auctioneer reached for a hidden switch, a last defense. A tower weapon began to glow. Varel didn't flinch. She stepped forward. The weapon fired, pure energy, enough to melt a ship. She raised her hand and caught it, with her bare fingers. Then, she closed her hand. The beam vanished like dust. Gasps echoed across the city. A noble screamed. Another collapsed in fear. One whispered, "She's a star child." The old blood. The goddess. Varel walked to the center of the arena. She spoke only once more. I carry every scream you stole, every dream you crushed, every tear you made bloom. She lifted her hands. A wave of memory passed through the city. Nobles dropped to their knees, crying. For the first time in their lives, they felt real pain, real sorrow, real love, the very thing they hunted. It broke them. Ken watched, speechless. She didn't destroy them with fire. She destroyed them with the thing they feared most, truth. Hours later, the arena was quiet. The nobles had fled. The children were safe. The city, once made for selling souls, now stood still. Ken sat on the steps, breathing the cool night air. Varel stood beside him, her glow now soft. What happens now? He asked. She looked at the stars. We return, rebuild, and remember. Ken smiled. You're not alone now. She looked down at him. No, she said. I have a bond, and it cannot be sold. Far above them, the stars shifted. A new signal went out across the galaxy. The Star Child has returned, and she did not come alone.